So, here we are with Sean, who originates from New York, if I'm completely correct.
Yep.
And whom I have tattooed for quite some time, doing terrible things to his torso, and now we're decorating his hand with a demonic fox. And the reason why we're doing a video about this, aside from it being a fun tattoo to do and all of that, is because Sean is a tattooist, but he's quite a well-travelled tattooist who has dealt with quite a few humans and has one hell of a collection of cool tattoos. And I think there's a lot you fuckers can learn from him, especially you fuckers who want to be tattoo artists.
I've done most of, not all of the Apprentice things.
That's a good start.
I mean, I first got interested in tattoos just, out of the normal sort of saw a cool picture book with Irizumi in it, so traditional Japanese tattooing. And I was like, shit, I want some of that on me.
Do I remember correctly, the first time I started tattooing you, were you in the process of becoming a tattoo artist back then, or were you just thinking
I was
about
thinking about it, and then the second session I was in the process of becoming an apprentice, and then by the time we finished my chess piece, I was done with being an apprentice. So you've seen me through my whole apprentice journey, essentially. But yeah, I just wound up actually following Peter's work when I was about 14. And just when I was in first or second year of university, he was in Berwick upon Tweed in Eyemouth, and I managed to get an appointment with him and start my torso piece. And at that point, I was just thinking about becoming a tattooer. Then by the time we started the second session on that piece, I was in the process of becoming an apprentice. And then by the time we finished my chest, I'm pretty much a tattooer who can stand on my own feet. But it was a long process in terms of, finding the right studio, finding the right people, being able to get an apprentice just by annoying the shop enough that they wouldn't even just sit me down and show me how to wrap a setup and go from there,
So one of the things that I think is really interesting about the way you've done it and gotten tattooed in general. Well, first of all, we should probably mention that you live in Edinburgh at the moment, and when I tattooed you first in Berwick upon Tweed or Eyemouth, that's the fucking butt end of nowhere. It was because you were up there, and it all came together.
Yep.
Because that's a massive piece on you.
Right.
So, but you've travelled back and forth between Edinburgh and New York, and you've gotten quite a collection of tattoos by different artists, and that aspect is, to me, one of the, it's very, very sensible to do, to get experience and get know-how by getting tattooed by many different people, and you have no fear of asking, which is an amazing trait to have if you want to learn something. You will literally just go, how do you do this? What machine do you use? Why? And it's a fucking important skill, and I've met many people who I really want to learn to tattoo, but I'm afraid to talk. Very unhelpful to yourself if you don't want to talk. But tell us a little bit about your tattoo journey, your journey of getting covered.
The second I turned 18, it's legal age for getting tattooed in America, and I think most of the world, I went to a studio in New York called Eastside Ink and got myself a Sailor Jerry flash. And then 2 weeks after that, I went down to Atlanta, because at the time I was actually a knife maker, so I was there for the Blade convention. Went down to Atlanta, met a really cool tattooer named Ben Thomas, and he ended up doing a giant rib piece for me, a tiger. To start living in Edinburgh, I think Peter was still working in Barcelona, or he just started traveling around. But it just happened so that I could get a piece from him to Whitley Bay to, finish up my chest, do this, and we'll do my hand, and, hang out with Peter and the gang here and all that stuff. Definitely been traveling to get my tattoos. My left arm's done by Paul Booth, and I've traveled back and forth from New York to Edinburgh just to get that done, or traveled to Dublin just to get that done. But to Peter's point of asking, even from before I was an apprentice, but especially after I finished my apprenticeship, I found it very, very important to go to people who are just better than you, or much more experienced than you, get tattooed by them, watch them fucking do it, and ask them questions. Like, for example, even if it's not your style at all. Like, for me, I like to do American traditional and Japanese traditional, where, like, my left arm is entirely, like, Paul Booth style black and gray, but every time I had a session with him, I needle him with questions, whether it's what needles do you use, what machines do you use, why that stroke, how do you move your wrist, what ink mixture do you use, what black ink brand do you use, what white ink brand do you use, etc., etc. I mean, even if I don't do the style at all, there's still things that I can learn. And same with when I get tattooed by Peter. Like, I don't do this style at all when I tattoo people, but like, it's important that I know how he does these things in case I run into something that, you know, comes adjacent to this skill set. Getting yourself tattooed by good artists, having a collection of good tattoos. I found that a lot of tattooers, before I became a tattooer, were willing to open up to me about tattooing because of the obvious time and money and pain commitment that I've made to inking my body. And it shows like a sign of sort of reverence for the industry and not just going in and getting yourself colored in like a Chipotle bag and then expecting people to then teach you.
I definitely think that the visible dedication makes it so much more appealing to be sharing anything, really. Like, it
shows that
most clients have questions, right? But if you are a client who's intending to become a tattoo artist, and you're phrasing questions, seeing that you have a reason to have phrased those questions because you have tattoos and you have had time to think about what the fuck is happening, it just makes more sense. It makes more sense for me to spend time thinking about my answers to you because you're actually, like, you're kind of in the know and you have a reason for wanting to know.
Like, as a very green new tattooer, like, I probably can call myself not an apprentice for maybe like 3 months at this point. There's a lot of shit I don't know, and I think it's very important to acknowledge that there's a lot of shit I don't know.
I've tattooed for 10 years, there's a lot of shit I don't know.
When I had issues with color blending or color work, you know, there's a guy that tattooed my leg, a biomech guy who's an expert at doing like very solid blended color fills. I just send him a message and be like, hey bro, how do I do this, or what's this, or what's that? And then, you know, they're willing to tell you because you've gotten tattooed by them, you have a bond with them, they're your friends, you know? Same with Peter. Every time I come down here, I have like a new question on how do I do this part of the body, how do I do that part of the body. He knows the kind of person I am. He's also very willing to like show me cool new machines and tell me, you know, cool shit about tattooing. And it's important to be able to strike that bond with people who tattoo you, I think.
I do feel that the urge for knowledge and willingness to learn has a huge importance in it. Like, I mentally prepare when I know that I have a session with you. I'm like, okay, what can I teach? What can I share this time? Because it's fun. Teaching makes me a better tattoo artist. Makes me a better person, for that matter. But I actually having like a little bit of mental prep and be like, okay, well, what have I learned between last time and this time? Because I don't remember what I said last time. I'm forgetful as well. But having something interesting to share, I think is really valuable because you want to be better, so I should want to help you.
You won't really run into tattooers that will purposefully feed you the wrong information.
No, but that was once the way.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
use a knitting needle.
Well, like for example, Tom Strom, who's also a guy that's I've gotten tattooed by, he told me that his mentor was the only tattoo shop in town at the time, and so kids who like, you know, would want to do their own backyard tattoos would have to go buy ink from him, and he would give them like really watered down black because he knows he's going to have to be the one to cover that up anyway, so he's just making it easy on himself to begin with.
Good move.
Yeah, so I mean, you won't really run into, you know, people that are going to purposefully feed you the wrong information in this day and age, but you might just get people who don't want to talk about it or just tell you like, why are you asking this? So if you want to be, I think if you are looking to be an apprentice, or if you are interested in tattooing or want to be a tattooer, it's important just to be straight up and just be like, I want to be a tattooer. I want to find an apprenticeship. And a good way of measuring that sort of dedication is by the ink on your body, making the fiscal and time dedication to make sure you're getting good quality tattooing on you as well. And you know, this is my first hand tattoo. Too many people who are looking to get into apprenticeships just start with their hands because they want
cool.
Yeah, they want that look of being tattooed without being tattooed. I think definitely just doing your research, finding the right tattooers is very important. For me, I take a very collector approach to my tattoos. I have a very wide range of styles on my body. I have like color realism to like American traditional to black and gray to Peter's madness on me. And to me,
descriptor.
That's important because I'm learning different things from each of these styles, right? Like I'm learning like how to put dots in correctly. I'm learning how to do black and gray shading correctly. Even if I won't do this style in my career, it's important. Once you have these tattoos on you, it's a permanent reference for you to look at if you run into trouble. You know, like these tattoos on my arms for Japanese style, like this peony on my inner arm has saved me countless times when I'm trying to figure out how to draw a fucking peony. I just look at it and be like, okay, I've got this. There's obviously people who just get like a bodysuit of one style, which is also cool. It's just up to personal preference.
I think it's also like what direction as an apprentice did you want your career to go in, and
well,
you're going in a style where you need the full skill set.
Yes, that's true.
I'm in a style where I need to do lines, solid black, and dots. Cool, okay. So it's not that like I don't need the whole variety, although whenever I have guest spotted anywhere, I spend a lot of time looking over shoulders of other tattoo artists.
How do you use that bag?
Yeah, because it's fucking amazing to see how people run their machines and how they do this shading and all of this stuff. And everyone has their own little way of doing things and changing things, and all that experience is just harsh way of saying it. It's money in the bank.
Yeah.
It's just experience equals value.
For sure.
I do think what you mentioned about like the old school way of doing shit and how it was in the neighborhood and all that stuff. Check out Books Closed, the episode with the interview of Army James, because it's fucking hilarious. There's some good stories in there. I would recommend anyone to
Book Closed is a great podcast.
It is an amazing podcast. And I mean, I've listened to it quite a lot, even though there's nothing that's relevant for my style, really. It's great hearing the stories from the industry, and it gives you respect for how it was in the old days. Because the industry has changed loads, and even though there's still shops that are kind of stuck in the 80s and 90s, the industry as a whole has become very artsy, and there's lots of tattoo artists out there who didn't even go through any type of apprenticeship and just went straight from art college or just from drawing weird shitty sketches to just tattooing because they bought a set of tattooing equipment off Amazon.
Apprenticeship, if you can figure out how to tattoo or you can learn how to tattoo through other methods, cool. I think the important part though is if you want to be a tattooer at all is you need to get tattooed.
Yeah.
Like it's insane how many tattooers you see that have like maybe like one tattoo on their stomach and a couple on their arms and call it a day because it hurts. Like yes, of course it hurts, but that's why you have to get it, is because if you don't get it, how do you know how your client is feeling?
We were talking a little bit about that before we started filming. That whole like, I have zero trust in tattoo artists who aren't tattooed. I wouldn't get tattooed by them, and I don't really feel that I can learn much from them because, sure, they might have thousands of hours tattooing people, but if you don't understand the pain that people are going through, You don't understand a huge fucking aspect of what it is that we're doing.
Like a chef that won't eat his own food.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense at all. Like, how are you going to tattoo someone over the ribs and, you know, tell them to sit still and don't move and, you know, bear with it? If you haven't gotten tattooed on your ribs, you don't know how fucking bad it feels. And I'm sure many of you at home who has gotten a rib tattoo will know what I'm talking about. If you want to be a tattooer, aside from getting an apprenticeship, the most important thing is just to get a shit ton of tattoos yourself. Get like as many areas tattooed as you can, with good artists that you like and you trust and you've done the research on, and styles that you're interested in. Or and like Peter said, one of the reasons I've gotten so many styles tattooed on me is because the type of tattooer I want to be is someone who can do multiple styles, who can take anything that comes through my door. Therefore, it is important for me to get as many different styles of tattoos as I can, so I can watch these tattooers do these tattoos. I think that is a very important aspect, is watching them do the tattoo. Like, I'm sure Peter can vouch for me, like every time he worked on my torso, if I could stare at him, I was staring at him.
Unnerving. Getting their torso tattooed is trying to look at what you're doing. It's difficult.
Yeah. And aside from looking, asking questions, you know, like, what needle are you using for these dots? Why? You know, like shit like that. I think it just comes down to getting tattooed a lot, figuring out how to do these things, and, you know, either going out and getting an apprenticeship or tattooing your thighs until they're fucking black, and then now you know how to tattoo. To be fair, that is the traditional way of doing it. Like the Japanese apprenticeships, they used to not teach you how to tattoo at all. You watched your mentor, and then you would go sit in your room with a bottle of ink and do it on your leg until you figured out how to fucking tattoo. So a lot of old traditional guys in Japan, the tops of their thighs are black. I learned a lot of fundamentals in my apprenticeship, but once I got out of my apprenticeship, I learned a lot of new things through, you know, because now I've finished my apprenticeship, I have a whole new set of questions I can ask my seniors in the industry, and I get my answers and I go home and tattoo. Yeah.